All right, that is going to be close enough for me, I say. So we are going to look at the title of the session is using the explanation game to engage students with primary sources. We're going to be working with Dr. Kenneth Anthony today. He is an associate professor in curriculum instruction and special education at Mississippi State University. He is also co-director with Dr. Paul Bedford and Dr. Nicole Miller with Teaching with Primary Sources Mississippi, a member of the Library of Congress Teaching with Primary Sources Consortium. And with that, I will give it away to you, Dr. Anthony.
Thank you, Al. Good afternoon. Looks like a good crowd. So, just to let you know, what we're going to do is I'm pretty good at reading the chat. So when I ask questions, y'all can hop in there and chat, and I'll make sure I can read those, and I will read to you kind of the game plan as we're going through. So if you have questions, if you have comments, and I'm going to ask for some feedback, and I'm going to ask some questions, ask those questions there, and we'll go ahead and get started. So I am Kenneth Anthony. Nicole Miller is on here with me. I don't think Paul Benford is able to make it today, but we are all three professors at Mississippi State University. I in elementary social studies. Nicole is middle school and does a lot of social studies, and Paul is secondary social studies. And we've been doing primary source stuff since about 2012 when Nicole and I both joined on at Mississippi State as assistant professors, and Paul joined us, I think, 2 years later. And so we'll talk more about what TPS Mississippi is and towards the end of it. But what we're going to talk about today is the explanation game, which is a wonderful strategy that you can use in a lot of different ways. I'm going to talk about what the explanation game is, the steps of it, and then we're going to go through the explanation game together. And I got to share my screen, so apologize. All right. So Al, you're supposed to tell me when I didn't share my screen.
My apologies, Kenny.
That's okay. All right, so we'll go to the next slide. So again, a little bit about Teaching Primary Sources Mississippi. We are part of that Library of Congress Teaching Primary Sources Consortium. And I'm going to just tell you, if you're a teacher in a school, they have a grant program that you need to know about. And at the end, I have the link that's available. And these slides are going to be available to you also after the session. And so it's a $20,000 grant. If you're interested in looking into it, we're glad to help out with that. And then, so a little bit about what we do. We do create and share classroom resources. We have primary source lesson plans that are on our website there's a link we'll share with you in a little bit. We do professional development in districts and in schools. We usually do probably about 4 a year in school districts, and we also do them at conferences like we're doing here, partnering with Mississippi Department of Archives and Histories. We work with other people like with Mississippi Department of Archives and History and other people. We also have 2 week-long seminars each summer. This year they were online, but we'll be announcing some of those. We also do some asynchronous online professional development that will get you up over 3 CEUs. And we're going to be announcing that information. It may have gone out on Friday in our newsletter. That information we'll share with that they'll be going out. And so I think it's going to start in February. So an opportunity to get 3 CEUs in February. So that's kind of what we do. Here's a link to the top link. And again, you'll get these slides later, but the top link is a link to our website at TPS Mississippi, and it has all types of resources on there, as well as lesson plans at elementary, middle, and high school. And then you have the Library of Congress website that has the teacher website that has access to tons of resources, lesson plans, and other things that can help you teach using primary sources. So I'd encourage you to go check that out. But today I'm talking about the explanation game. The explanation game is one of probably 18 to 20 thinking routines, and Project Zero and I can't remember who the people are now, but they are out of Harvard. They're out of Project Zero. People that Making Think Invisible. They have 21 routines. I think they've expanded it now. There's more than that. And these routines are processes that you can teach your students, and then you can use them over and over again in your lessons with your students. And most of them are 3 to 5 steps. Some of them can take 10 minutes to do. Some of them can take 30 minutes to an hour to use, depending upon how you use those. Make sure I don't have anybody ask them questions. So there's 3 different types. There are ideas for introducing and exploring ideas. Explanation game is one of those. It really is an introductory type of thing. So the way I'm going to use explanation game is I'm going to introduce something that you don't know something about. And so my goal is to kind of get you to try to figure out what's going on, hence the explanation game. You're trying to develop an explanation. So it's a great way to introduce a topic or to explore a topic. Other thinking routines I have are synthesizing and organizing ideas. Maybe something that you do in the middle of a lesson after you've done some type of instructional input and you want the students to synthesize or organize information on their own. Then there are some of those. And then there are some that are really research type of routines, the digging deeper into idea routines. And in the book, Making Thinking Visible, which they're now in the second edition, they have those organized into chapters and they talk about the science behind them. And so if you're ever, beat up by your principal or superintendent about what type of things you're using that are research-based, these Making Thinking Visible thinking routines are research-based, and there's a lot of good theory and research behind them. And in the book, they explain that. So I want to let you know this is part of a larger group of topics or group of routines, and this is just one of them. And I encourage you to look into those. All right. So the explanation game. So how do you use it? I'm going to use it today to introduce, I think, a unique topic. Now, if you know my topic, if you've seen this before, you're familiar with it, when you see the image, for at least 10 minutes, pretend like you don't know anything about it and don't spoil it for the other people. But it's a really good thing. And I'm going to give 2 examples, but I'm going to develop one example in depth today. It's also going to be used to introduce a familiar topic, but from a different perspective, because you're getting students to think about what's really going on in this image. This is used with images. Third thing it does is it can help develop observation skills. And I think our students need to do that. And it forces students to ask a lot of questions, or not to ask a lot of questions, to answer a lot of questions, to make a lot of observations and after they've made those observations, then they go into the trying to figure out what's going on. So they don't come up with an explanation immediately, which we really want to do these days. We want to jump to the conclusion. This forces the students, it forces us to make observations and then to base our explanation or conclusion on those observations. And it may or may not be that important that they actually get the answer or figure it out. That's okay. Of course, I've already said it's only used with visual primary sources. Could also be used with, other types of images, but it is an image-based or visual-based strategy or thinking routine. But we use it a lot with primary sources, and it's probably one of my favorite. And then there needs to be a little bit of ambiguity. It can't be something that we know what's going on there. And so without further ado, we're going to give it a try, though I'm looking for trying to find the chat box, and I don't see it right now. Al, will you do me a favor and chat?
I'm also monitoring it, Kenny.
I just don't see it. Am I looking for the chat?
When you're sharing earlier, I had to scroll on top when it was like, you're sharing your screen. And then there was like some options and 3 dots on the right of like the shared screen part.
Yep, that's where I am. See, record meeting, info, hide names, hide video panel, share computer. And I got leave, but I don't want that. I'm just trying to see so I can make sure
I'll message you, see if it pops up.
Yeah, let's see if it pops up. And then, because in a minute, I'm going to need that. There it goes. It's popping up now. All right, thank you. Now it popped up. All right, I knew I was missing something. All right, so because I need it on the next screen. So there are a few steps to explanation game, and this one has 5 steps. And if you buy the book, Making Thinking Visible, it's the first edition, you end up having all the steps there. And so there are 5. Setup is the teacher. The teacher has to find an image that has some ambiguity in it that's related to the topic and that is rich enough in details that students can make observations and begin to come up with explanations that they can base observations on. So you do the setup, and I've already done the setup. The second step is name it. That is where the students, who will be, you guys will be playing the students today, will just name things that they see in the image. And I've done this where I've named for 15 minutes in some images. And then Once you name it, then you get into explain it. Explain it is where you are trying to explain what is going on in the image. And then you give the reasons, and the reasons obviously should be connected to the name it, connected to the observations that we made. Yeah, and Dr. Miller pointed out that Dr. Miller put the link. The good news is you don't have to buy the book. They actually have the thinking routines all on the internet, but the book is worth buying. And they also can be used in other things besides social studies. I just happen to be a social studies person. But then they give reasons. They give a bunch of reasons. You want them to justify, based upon the image, what's going on, using the evidence that's there. And then you force them to come up with generate some alternatives too. So everyone may agree that, this is the explanation for what's going on in this image. But then you want them to develop alternatives to that. In this particular image I'm going to share with you, usually I get 2 to 3 different alternatives. The final thing is, maybe prior to that, is to come up with some assessment criteria and using to help push students to deeper thinking. One of the assessment criteria is just the fluency and their ability to observe and to name the different things that are actually in the image. Because when I've done this with students, whether they're college students or elementary, middle school students, a lot of times they want to name a few things and then go straight to explain it. You need to hold them back and say, no, let's name as much as we can see, because the more things we name, the more things we see, the more likely we are to come up with a quality explanation. Another assessment criteria might be that you are able to give reasons to back up your explanations. And don't we want that with our students? A lot of times students get away, that just stinks. Okay, so why does it stink? Give me 3 reasons why it stinks. Instead of just making an evaluation or assessment of a situation, we're now forcing them to back it up. And so maybe we evaluate or assess their ability to give reasons that back up their explanation. And then another one might be their ability, even though they may believe 100% that their explanation is correct, can they hold that view, and can they think of another alternative and back and support that alternative, which I think is a powerful skill that our students need to do. It's okay if I have a particular belief about a particular situation, but can I think about an alternative to it and think of supporting documentation or reasons for that one too. So that is kind of how we might come up with some different assessment criteria. So now I'm about to share with you the image, okay, that we're going to do it. So I've set it up, and the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to name it, and I want you to name no explanations, no reasons. I just want you to name things that you see in the image. All right. So here we go. Maybe. All right. So I've already set it up. So someone go ahead and start naming some things, and I'm going to make it big for just a second. Maybe I'm going to make it big. And I am looking in the chat. So go ahead and start. I typed in a chat of what types of things you are seeing in there. Oh, we got people, smoke. Whoa, people, smoke, wagon, cut trees, tall trees, men, trees, breaking ground. Breaking ground is an explanation. Piles of wood, workers, lumbers, wood cutting, men. Keep on going. Is that a fence? I think that is a fence. A wagon. Yep, there's a wagon here. Clearing land is an explanation. Smoky sky, dirt, livestock. Yeah, we have the rear end of some type of animal here. New ground. A horse is behind. It is a horse, I believe. All right, what else? Hats on the men. Good. Keep on going. More things that we see, and I'm going to summarize them. So keep on throwing things out there. Men, yeah, we're talking about what they're wearing. Men got suspenders on. An animal. Horses behind again. New ground might be an explanation. Horse needs to be fed better. That's an explanation. All right, 2x4s. Yep. Wintertime or cooler weather. That's an explanation. I don't know if we can tell that. Professional dress, fathers and sons. All right. Well, we know that we have older men and younger men probably. Smoke, question mark. Yeah, there's some smoke here. An umbrella by one man. Good. Let's start looking for some more finer details. Hats. Yes, they got different hats on, a variety of different types of hats. You can see on my, all right, what else? Get 3 more things and I'm going to summarize it. Spoke wheels. Good. And what is this spoke wheels on? Somebody says all white men, but I think we might want to look closer. Leaves on trees. Good. A wagon. That is a wagon. Thank you, Gene. All right. They're standing with their hands on their side, their hips. Nope. Somehow they're clearing land is an explanation. All right. Men are in shirt sleeves and hats. All right. Fence. Okay. So let's pause it for just a second. I'm going to summarize what you all have just said. Let me check my time. All right. So I'm going to work from the foreground to the background. So we do have a patch of ground that is clear of vegetation. Someone's pointed that out. We do have some lumber here. I don't know if they're 2x4s or not, but they're definitely lumber. All right, there's wood here. There is a fence all the way around the back or across the back. There are men, and we'll talk about the men. There's a man with an umbrella. The men are dressed in sleeves and hats and jackets and vests and stuff like that. Okay. This guy's got a fancy hat going there. All right. Someone said that they are all white men, but if you look back here and I've got the arrow on a man and another man and another man, it appears that not every man is what is white. There appears to be some black men here. They're kind of standing off away though from everybody. So we got the fence. We do have the wagon here. And you could actually talk about the difference between a wagon and a cart. It has to do with 2 wheels, I think, versus 4 wheels. Has spokes on it. It's covered in the left half. It shouldn't be. Can y'all see it now? Ann, can you see the whole image now? All right. We got the horses behind, a narrow horse. We'll talk about what type of wagon it is maybe in a minute, but it is a wagon. We do have the horses behind, and someone did say it is a skinny horse. All right. Then there is, they got these trees here. You got leaves on the trees. I think someone talked about them being pine trees. We got smoke. There is smoke up here. You got smoke from here and got smoke there. All right. I'm going to double check make sure I didn't miss anything. Leaves on trees, spokes on wheels, hats. Someone says father and sons, but I don't know if they're father and sons, but they are younger men and older men, it appears. Someone does say they appear to be professional dress. We got suspenders, sand and dirt. We talked about that. That is a fence. All right. Trees, tall trees, smoke. Okay, good. I think I covered everything. Now, let's look at it. Looks like a dog. Yes. I've looked at this very closely, and that is a dog. I have this print off much bigger. Yeah, there's a dog sitting there. All right, so let's do a few more things. Let's see if we can get a few more details out of this. Okay, so throw out some more details. We got looks like a dog. Piles of something on the left. Yeah, right here. Did someone mention the picture is black and white? You're right. It is a black and white picture. Good. What else? And that's going to be important in a little bit. A lot of these things are going to be important in us trying to figure out what's going on in this image. All right. But we didn't mention that. So what else? There's a big pile of something on the left. Must have on white shirts. All right. The remaining trees look bare. That's right. They do look bare. Good. What else? A few more things. Let's try to get 3 more things, and then I think we're pretty close. Is that a lake in the background on the right? I can't tell. It's cleared land, that's for sure. Yeah, we'll talk about that probably since the time frame. It looks like this isn't the first thing. Things have been burned there. Okay. All right. That's probably a pretty good hint, Tiffany. 2 more things, then we'll move on. Two more things. Let's look, what is this pile of things right here? Can someone make a comment on that? What do you notice about it? What do you observe about this thing over here on the left behind the wagon that some of the men are standing on? Bricks maybe? Yeah, it appears that there's some symmetry there. I would agree. Okay, what else? Stacked very high, hay bales. Yep. Is it dirt? Okay. So now we've done, let me move this out of the way. We've named it. Now let's explain it, okay? What is going on in this image? And someone said it looks like a roof. It kind of does look like a roof, maybe because there's some symmetry there, some rectangle type things that's going on there. So let's explain it. Who has an idea of what's going on in this image? And don't be afraid. Just start throwing things out there. They're raising a barn or something, all right, for the group. So it obviously a group of people fixing the house or a barn. Okay, keep on going. Getting ready to build a barn, land expansion, building a church. Whoa, coming together to build something damaged in a tornado. Looks like a hill behind the person on the list. Men posing in front of a work site. All right. Yep. Okay. On the left. Looks like a hill behind the people on the left. Yeah. So maybe this is a hill. Good. So right now, people are talking about maybe that this is a group of men working together to build something and that they're posing. And of course, we'll talk about that. Community working together. The men are clearing land for use. Okay. Let's assume that they are building. All right. And they're working together and that they're posing. Give us some reasons for that. What are the reasons that we think that they are building something together and that they're posing? What are some reasons? Give the evidence from the image. Yeah, they're in two lines. They're proud of the work. This is obviously a posed image, okay? They pose this image, good. The men in the back are standing on a frame. Yeah, they're standing on something to get themselves a little bit higher than everyone else. It would be community building, something they all could benefit from, okay? What else is that? What's evidence that they're building something? Yeah, it's important because they want to take a picture, like a groundbreaking ceremony. Great. The wood pile is evidence that they're building something. What else is evidence that they're building something? The burning limbs, the clearing land because of burning limbs. Thank you. Let's see, cleared land plus wood pile plus number of people, all that together. Thanks, Al. Shows that it's a group of people working together. Other evidence that they are building something. The wood pile. What else? I mean, we've all talked about some other things we've talked about in this image. All right, we talked about the wood. Yep, I got that. What else? We got the men that are posing, obviously. There's a bunch of them. There's the burning that's going on. So maybe they're clearing land, right? But what else might be an indication that they're building something, that they're working? Because it's odd, we don't dress like that to work, do we? You know, if I was going to work, I wouldn't be wearing white shirts and a hat. The wood pile, what else? What about this thing right here? What would they use this for? They took off their jackets. Yeah. So not wearing their jackets. But what would this be used for that I got the arrow on? Yeah, haul the trees or haul the lumber. So good. Thank you, Shannon. So there's a lot of things. There are a lot of hints here. Now, we support the idea that they're building something. The trees are shaded on certain sides, protect structures from being destroyed from falling debris. Okay. So good, we're making a lot of good support, or we're making a lot of supportive reasoning. Okay, we're identifying a lot of things. So we've got one theory, all right, that they are a group of men or people working together as a community to build something. What is an alternative explanation? What is an alternative explanation? They burned down something they hated. All right. They tearing down something, burning it, renovating. They're clearing the damaged structure, tearing down something. They tore down a building or hauling it off. So that's usually, as you can imagine, I've used this particular source a few times. This particular, so what's the evidence that they're tearing down something? Or that they're removing something? The smoke, okay. What else? All right, good. The pile of wood. Yeah, what would make you think this pile of wood is that they're tearing something down? Yeah, it's not stacked. My dad would lose his mind. My dad was an engineer, and he would lose his mind if I stacked wood like this. No, this looks like it's not, yeah, the wood's not stacked. All right, you know, that's usually the thing. The fire and the wood not being stacked is usually the thing when I do the explanation game. It looks like planks, it's not organized. Yep. So there's, the neat thing is we can use evidence, the same evidence in this image to support equally, I think, that they're building something, that they're tearing something down. And so that's a lot of fun that, and I think it's a lesson there for evidence. A lot of people will say, we need to be evidence, we need to be science. Well, two people can look at science and what? They can come up with two different conclusions often, okay? So yeah, the bricks look organized, good. That's good, Charlotte, the bricks look organized. You can tell something that was once up there because they're standing on structure. Yeah, they're standing on something. There's something they are standing on back here, and there is a fence. And a lot of people point that out that do this. A lot of students do, and also adults that do this. They point out that there's a fence there already, and then there's now nothing there. So it looks like there could have been something there, and it's not there. Now, are y'all ready to know what it is? Who knows what it is? Don't say what it is if you know what it is. If you know what it is, right, type yes and send it in the chat if you already know. Besides you, Nicole Miller. Tiffany, you know, that's a wonderful thing, Tiffany. This right here, you do this with students, it will drive them nuts if you choose the right image. And I can do this for 30, I can make this particular thing in person, can make it last about 30 minutes. And it will drive everybody nuts. Anyway, but I'm not going to drive y'all nuts anymore because I only have about 23 more minutes. And so we're going to get ready to that. That's right. Anticipation really builds interest. Y'all ready? Here it goes. Maybe. Can't get it to, trying to get my slide to advance and it won't. There we go. Now, there we go. Were you right? What's going on here? So they were building a stadium, a boxing rink. So if I was really had the time, we would analyze this source, but I'm just going to kind of read it to you. It's interesting is I'm about right now about 8 miles. I'm in Camp Shelby, Mississippi. So I'm about 8 miles from the location of this, of where this happened. So this is an image from Library of Congress. It says John L. Sullivan, champion of the world, copyrighted Thomas Pye, 1889. It says the Sullivan-Kilrain fight, 75th round. The Library of Congress has images from every round of this fight. And as you can see, all these men here, what do you think that previous, let me go back one. Trying to go back one. Remember the brick pile? Maybe that was what? That was the stand that they were building. That was the grandstand. That's part of the grandstand. You see the trees and all that stuff. This grandstand goes all the way around. And you can't really see, but the motion is Sullivan knocking down Kilrain. So it's the Sullivan-Kilrain fight, 75th round, the knockout blow. Sullivan hits Kilrain a moderate blow on the chest, and Kilrain goes down for the last time. This is the last bare knuckle championship fight in U.S. history. Now, there is some bare knuckle fighting that's happening now, but it's not like this. After this, everyone goes to gloves and stuff like that. And what's really neat about the fighting back then was the rounds were not timed. And you'd go to the middle of the ring, and if you've ever been to a karate match, they have two lines, and you start the line, and then they start the round, and you could throw somebody to the ground, or you could knock somebody to the ground, and literally you could pull them by the hair, by the clothes, by the facial hair, whatever it was, by their trunks. It was kind of like a mixture of wrestling and boxing. And if somebody got thrown to the ground, the round ended. Somebody got knocked to the ground, the round ended. The match ended when the other person couldn't get up. So a round could last 5 minutes or 5 seconds, and a match could last 10 minutes or 2.5 hours. And so this match, now this was illegal. This fight was an illegal fight, and it happened in Mississippi. All right, we'll talk a little bit more about that. And there's I mean, it's a neat thing, but there's a lot of things about this about who John L. Sullivan was. And so I'll share with you some of this information. Yep, both Irish, and there's a lot there. So it was the last bare knuckle fight in USA. It happened in Richburg, Mississippi. Again, that's just south of Hattiesburg, Mississippi. If you've ever eaten at Sully's Steakhouse is named after John L. Sullivan, and it's right there at the land where this fight took place. July 8th, 1889, John L. Sullivan versus Jake Kilrain. If you're a Rocky fan, John L. Sullivan was kind of like the washed up Rocky Balboa in Rocky 3 or 4, whichever one you want to choose. Maybe Rocky 4 is a better choice. He's all washed up. He's overweight. He's not fit to fight. Jake Kilrain is the up and coming. He's the guy that's going to win the fight, everyone thinks. John L. Sullivan has to go off, and he has to train in, I believe, upstate New York, away from everybody. And he has a trainer that trains him and to get him slimmed down. Everyone thinks, oh, Jake Kilrain's going to win. John L. Sullivan at the time is like LeBron James or Michael Jordan or some other sports. He is world famous. He's national famous. He is a big deal. He is a larger than life figure, though he's not a very good person. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But this fight happens in Mississippi. Bare knuckle fighting is illegal in the United States, but they know this fight is going to happen. Every Southern governor, whether it's Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, Tennessee, Alabama, and Florida, are scared that this fight is going to happen in their state and embarrass them because they don't want to be seen as lawless. They used to have these fights like in New York on the river in between New York and New Jersey because there was no one had true jurisdiction. So they'd actually have fights on barges in the river. And so, but they had started to shut down all these fights. But as illegal as these fights are, you saw how many people were here. So the promoters, Kilrain and Sullivan's promoters, they get together and they collude with the railroad companies. And everyone goes to New Orleans. And everyone knows they're all going to New Orleans, but they don't know where the fight's going to happen. And so the day before the fight, they build the arena in Richburg, Mississippi. And oh, by the way, Mr. Rich in Richburg, Mississippi happens to own a lumber mill. So they can cut those trees, they can make the lumber, and they can build the stadium or build the grandstands for the match. So the night before the fight, Kilrain and Sullivan and all the people that want to go watch the fight get on the train. They don't know where they're going. They don't know if they're going to Texas, somewhere else in Louisiana, or wherever. They end up in Mississippi, south of Hattiesburg, right off the railroad, and they fight the fight. The governor of Mississippi sent out the militia to try to stop the fight, but was unsuccessful. So the fight lasts 75 rounds, 2.5 hours. It says 2 hours and 18 minutes, but some people say 2.5 hours, but regardless, 2 hours and 18 minutes. The heat is over 100 degrees. It's July in Mississippi. They fight. Jake Kilrain is drinking whiskey. John L. Sullivan is drinking iced tea, probably mixed with whiskey in between the rounds. Jake Kilrain starts to kind of realize that he's overmatched. And so several of the rounds, he takes dives. He barely gets hit and he falls in the round to give himself a little bit of time to rest before he has to go into the next round. But eventually Sullivan wears him down, and doesn't take much. And they're both barely standing up at the end because they probably, it's 100 degrees. They've got significant amounts of alcohol in their system, and they've been hitting each other and throwing each other to the ground. The interesting thing is when John L. Sullivan dies, Jake Kilrain is a pallbearer at his funeral. So they end up being friends. John L. Sullivan is Irish. He grows up in Boston, and the only way for him to move up socially is through being a bouncer, and then he learns how to fight and become a fighter, become a boxer. Like a product of his time, he is not very progressive on race. Sullivan refused to fight a black man. He refused to because there was a lot of fear that if a white man fought a black man and a black man won, what would that say about equality? You got to think about it, it's 1889, okay? What are race relationships like in America? And so as big a deal as John L. Sullivan is he is a sports hero, probably transcends sports. When it looks at it, he's not very progressive on race, but he is a product of his time. And so we can talk about that. Think about our sports heroes today and how we hold them up. John Sullivan was held up, but on race, he wasn't there. And then he was proving that, the first time a white man fought a black man in a big match, black man won, and it was a big, huge deal. And so people were worried about that. John L. Sullivan, again, also, they were, after these matches, these two boxers, after they fought the real match, they would go tour all over the United States or all over the world, and they would do fake matches where they would they would fight, and they would maybe hit each other, really throw each other down, but they would kind of reenact the actual boxing match. And so they would tour all over, and people would pack arenas to see them. And John L. Sullivan was married. He was not a very good husband. He liked women and he liked booze, and he got mad at his wife and left her somewhere in the Midwest on the middle of a national tour. So there's a lot of neat things we can talk about when it comes to how do we revere sports figures, because don't our sports figures sometimes let us down today. The great thing is there's tons of information out here about it, and it is a great incident, because we think that sports are a big deal just now. The president of the United States was getting updates round by round on this match, even though it was illegal. There was tons of betting on this match, even though it was illegal. Ultimately, John Sullivan and Jake Kilrain had to come back to Jackson, Mississippi, and stand before a judge for this illegal fight. John L. Sullivan, you can find his statement. He was very apologetic, and he's like, I'm sorry, and I won't ever do it again. I think he got off with a light fine. I think Kilrain spent a night in jail and then paid a fine. But it didn't. They were still big and famous. And Sullivan ended up fighting a few boxing matches with gloves, but ultimately he became a teetotaler. He supported temperance and ran for Congress on that on the ticket of supporting temperance. So he kind of maybe sees the light. If you're familiar with, is an image of a man like this with a big mustache. That's John L. Sullivan. And he doesn't have the mustache in this, because he had a mustache and he has his hair cut, because Jake Kilrain could grab his hair, his mustache, and throw him to the ground. That was perfectly legal in these types of fights. So there are tons. Let me see if there any questions real quick. I didn't do a good job of checking the chat. Someone said they're both Irish. Yeah, and it is fun to bring the suspense up on this. All right, let me go back now. So this is from the Library of Congress. The Library of Congress has tons of information about this fight, and I'll show it to you towards the end. But in Chronicling of America, the Library of Congress has all these old newspapers. Now, I used it to look up all this cool stuff about John L. Sullivan and boxing, and I'm actually not a boxing fan. I just think this particular event is really neat. It says he was the first heavyweight hero. Brute force incarnate, size and power are mythical. The Boston Strong Point elevates bare knuckle boxing to mainstream sport, becomes the first great American boxer, and probably the first great American sports hero. It's the last world champion bare knuckle boxer and first glove boxing champion. Read more about it. So there's some great information there. And they have all of these newspaper articles. I'm going to show you one in a minute. And thank you for putting that in there, Sheriff. All right, let me go to the next slide and show you. So this is another example of something that they have there. They have his timeline. He's fighting in 1882. Look, he knocks out Patty Ryan in a bare knuckle match in Mississippi City, Mississippi, which is on the Gulf Coast. Actually was one of the original locations where they thought they might put the University of Mississippi before they decided to put it in Oxford. Mississippi City doesn't exist. I think it was between Gulfport and Biloxi and has now disappeared. 1886, they meet again, and then Sullivan wins a glove match in 1886. So we're back into glove matches and stuff. 1888, you got another match in France. So it shows you how big boxing is. Boxing is an international thing. And Sullivan comes back and says, I will fight any man for $10,000, except for he refuses to fight a black man. And then Jake Kilrain challenges him in 1888. Sullivan is washed up. There's some pictures of Sullivan. You would go, there's no way this Santa Claus-sized man could fight again. And that's what the world thought. They thought there's no way Sullivan will beat Kilrain. But Kilrain ends up winning. There's tons of information about it. Of course, that picture that I just showed you, 1889, there were 3,000 people about that. So in a day, they built a stadium that held 3,000 people. All right. And those people also were moved by the railroads companies who colluded with the boxing promoters. Okay. And it was a really big deal. All right. And of course, someone said we're going to fight again, but he did end up fighting, I think at least one more time. Yeah. Jim Corbett. I think Jim Corbett ended up getting beat he was one of the early guys fought a black man and ended up getting beat. But Sullivan retires, and then he becomes a supporter of temperance, and ends up dying in 1918. And interesting enough, Jake Kilrain is a pallbearer, so it's kind of neat story there. He lived a pretty rough life. There's no question about that. So all this information, is there. So there's a lot of neat things you can do. I'll talk about that. Some of the fun things you can do with this. You're going to get these slides. You can read, go check out these links if you're interested in just great stories. Some of them are good stories to use, or good readings to use in your school, but not all of them. So you want to check and make sure which ones you do. The Chronicling America. So this is the, if you look at this newspaper here is from, I think from St. Paul, Minnesota. And everywhere it's highlighted is Sullivan. The whole front page the St. Paul, Minnesota newspaper, the day after the fight, is all about Jake Kilrain and John Sullivan. So this is Jake Kilrain. And then they got a portly John Sullivan photo here, or drawing here, but he was much thinner when he actually did the fight. Anyway, so it's got all this. People knew John Slugs Jake. They knew who they were. There was no ESPN. It was all newspapers, but they knew who these men were. And so this whole thing was a description of the fight, how they got there and stuff like that. And of course, have another image here. That's the, I think that's the knockout blow also there. You can see that's John L. Sullivan facing us, and then Kilrain's being pushed against the rope there. So some good links here that you can go check out information about John L. Sullivan. Some things that you can do. So I just did an introductory activity. I've already kind of talked about a few things you could do. You could talk about, the role of sports in society, a lot of things. What do we do as sports heroes? You could also do a written account of the fight. You could find enough of the images and provide the students about 10 images from throughout the fight, because there's a couple of times when Jake Kilrain has the upper hand, and using the images that have little captions, you could have the students do that, and they can create a storyboard about the fight, combining some of the primary sources and maybe some of the other secondary written accounts. So there's some neat things you do. You could have them, you can not give them the captions, have them provide captions. So there are some things that you can do that are extension activities, writing with them beyond using the explanation game. And again, my whole goal for this is to kind of just show you how you can use the explanation game to build that interest. We're not going to take the time to do this, but I want you to do this another time. I want you to go to the Library of Congress website. I want you to think of a topic that you like. It needs to be an American history topic to be best. And then think of how you can use the explanation game. Find a photograph that you could use to introduce a really neat topic. And then think about how you could extend the lesson, or even extend this lesson. And so I'll show you this image. This is an image from Mississippi also. This is an image that I would use the explanation game to introduce a unit on segregation. All right. Because once the kids get in there, they'll realize, once they observe, they'll start observing things that like white men only, colored admission 10 cents. And then they'll figure out that this is a movie theater, and it's a segregated movie theater. Oftentimes in the stories of segregation, we talk about buses, and we talk about trains, we talk about schools. But this is a great image that maybe we start with something like the movie theater, that the movie theater was segregated, had segregated seating. Oftentimes I don't think people think about those. Our students don't think about this. And this is an image from Mississippi. And I think this image actually is co-held between Mississippi Department of Archives and History and the Library of Congress. I think it's on both websites. I could be wrong on that, but it's happened before. So we could do this. We're not going to do this today, but we could do this also with another image. And so I would use this to introduce that. And this is a great image. I think it's from Clarksville, Mississippi. It is from the Mississippi Delta, though. And it's in between World War I and World War II. That's the other thing we always think about. Often we think about segregation. We put it in the 1950s so we can show a longer line of segregation. So I'm going to conclude here. And primary sources are great to hook and introduce your students to new topics. Some of y'all I had, you couldn't wait for me to show you and to tell you what's going on. And that's really a powerful thing about the explanation game, that we can hook our students. We can get them really, really, really interested in it. we can be deliberate in the way we use the thinking game to introduce that from. There are a lot of other thinking routines. Explanation game is just one I want to share with you today because I think it is very powerful. I think if I was teaching about segregation in Mississippi or anywhere in the United States, I think that using explanation game with that the segregated theater is one that's really good. I think there are a lot of neat things that we can do there. So I'd encourage you to do that. I encourage you to go to our website, TPS Mississippi website. There are tons of resources there. Nicole, are you still here?
I am.
You want to talk about some of the other opportunities and
Sure.
And I'll let Nicole talk about some other opportunities. Go ahead, Nicole.
So we are going to be hosting basically we're going to host it for 8 weeks, an online asynchronous course on teaching with primary sources. I won't lie, it's an intensive course, which is why it gives you 3 CEUs. But it will take you through steps of learning about how to search in the Library of Congress, because that's not always easy. It will allow you to learn how to use different strategies for teaching with primary sources, such as the explanation game, but different ones for this purpose. And then how do you move all that together in creating your own lesson plan using one of these strategies provided. And so that's one option. We're already taking applications for that now. We will be sending that out on our newsletter. You can sign up for our newsletter on our website. You can also follow us on Facebook, and we announce and put links to registration there as well. And we also, we'll be hosting, like Kenny said, our 2 summer institutes. We're trying to flesh that out now. We know that we can host camps face-to-face in the summer on the Mississippi State campus, but we are not positive exactly what that's going to look like quite yet in this COVID world that we have. And so we also are likely going to host a 1-day similar to this event. We just had one on October 24th that was a really good time. And then also, as he mentioned earlier, the Library of Congress offers these regional grants. And so these regional grants are given to schools or to organizations, basically to support integrating primary sources into your school, district, or classroom. And so essentially you can apply for those, and they're actually relatively simple in the grant making world. And we are definitely here to help you if you would like some assistance or to discuss it prior to approaching the library. Did I hit everything, Kenny?
I think so. Thank you for that. And, we're going to continue doing the work that we're doing. I think we appreciate and love our relationship and partnership with Mississippi Department of Archives and History. And we're probably going to continue working with them on some stuff. So I would just say, look forward to other opportunities that are out there that we offer. The social studies community in Mississippi is kind of small. But I think that we offer an awful lot of opportunities out there for professional development or other types of things. And so I'd guarantee you, that if you want to help with a grant, if you want to help with PD in your district, stuff like that, just contact us. We are glad to come and do that, especially hopefully as we're beginning to open up. But we've gotten really adept at doing things online, also through Zoom or through WebEx or whatever type of source that there is. Are there any questions as I go to the last slide, and I can answer them? The reason I put this on there is that on there you see the link to the Making Think Invisible book. That's a 2011. I think they have one that came out in 2019. Also, here are the thinking routine links. Here's our link, and then there's a link. And I've already sent Al a handout that has a few other links in it. Some of it's the same stuff, but it's just all on one page, and it has a link to some of the information about John L. Sullivan, who I think is fascinating. And Nicole used to laugh at me because I was always tinkering with, thinking about and talking about this boxing match there. And I'll just tell you, I own a shirt that has John L. Sullivan doing this, and a lot of times I wear the shirt for this. Thank you, Al. For putting that up there. And I'll just tell you, if you want to see, you want a good steak, but you also want to see a bunch of images of John L. Sullivan, Jake Kilrain fighting, go to Sully's in Hattiesburg, just one of the exits south of the, heading out of town. And they have all his images, and on the menu, they have a description of the information. So thank y'all so much. I think I've given my time up. I will not reserve the balance of my time, Al, but I will be here to answer questions. Thank you all. Y'all are a great audience. I know it's hard to put information in chat and information, but y'all were very, very, very participatory, if that's a word. And I thank you for that. And again, thank you, Mississippi Department of Archives and History. And anyway, unless you have any questions, I'm going to hand it back over to you, Al.
Sounds good. We'll hang on just to see if there's a couple of questions as I make some final announcements before we go to our last session. So just a couple things to bring up before we end for session 4 here is we're going to make sure that link gets put back in for sign in. So if you have not signed in for session 4, or if you missed the first link, you will have the opportunity to do so. So that should be in the chat shortly. As you saw, I put Dr. Anthony's resource that he sent will be there. And as he mentioned, the PowerPoint will be on our website probably next week, if not the week after at the absolute latest. So you can make sure to grab that and get all the links from it if needed. And there's that sign in link in the chat now if you need that. We have a little bit of an extended break before we go to session 5. So session 5 is the final one of the day. You've been through a gauntlet of 4-hour-long sessions. So we're going to take a 30-minute break before we go to this last session. So we're going to start back up at 3 p.m. We're going to go from 3 to 4, and then we're going to let you go for the day. After that last session there. So we'll put the link in there for that last session so you have access to it so that you can come to session 5 at 3 p.m. And unless there are any questions that pop up, and I do not see any, we will wrap this one up a little bit early so you can have a little bit more of an extended break. And we will see everyone at 3. And I'm going to leave the video feed and everything up for a little bit so everybody can have those links and grab those before I shut the meeting down. Again, thank you, TPS Mississippi. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Kenny, for your work, and glad you could be with us today.
Thank you.
All right, well, we will see everybody at 3 p.m. Once you get done, feel free to log off, and I will end the meeting here in about a minute, just to make sure that y'all have a chance to grab those links.
Thanks, Al. I'm going to hop off and go back to my training and everything. But thank you. It was wonderful. You had a wonderful group of participants. And I'm always amazed at how willing people are, I guess, to sit there and type and participate. I know it's not easy, and I can't wait to we do this maybe next year face-to-face. And I'm willing to drive down or up to Jackson, depending upon wherever I am, okay?
Sounds good. All right. We'll see you then, Kenny. And I'm going to go ahead and end the presentation for everybody. And we will see you here in about 30 minutes.